Welcome to Atmospheric Lights. Have you ever wondered who's really behind the curtain? Pulling the levers on this whole UFO, UAP narrative.
Well, let's take a deep dive into some pretty compelling testimony. Footage, even. It really shines a light on a hidden world. UAP retrieval. Psychic phenomena. A government, of course, shrouded in secrecy.
Yeah, we're going to be focusing on Jake Barber, former Air Force special operative. Background as an aerospace mechanic.
He claims to have been involved in recovering crashed UAPs. Some, he says, are of non-human origin.
And this information all comes from a recent interview he did with News Nation. It even features, get this, corroborating accounts from Barber's own colleagues.
And a Stanford professor even reviewed his medical records for the interview. Pretty interesting, right?
Yeah, buckle up. This deep dive takes us to some pretty unexpected places. Claims that honestly might sound like they're straight out of science fiction.
But they're presented as stark reality by the people involved. So we're going to unpack these key claims from Barber's interview, examine the evidence, and discuss what it all means for us, for how we understand the UAP phenomenon as a whole.
Barber's background, to say the least, is impressive. Air Force Special Operations helicopter pilot, top secret clearance.
Yeah, his resume just screams high-level involvement. And it's worth pointing out that News Nation did their due diligence. They corroborated his credentials.
Yeah, several former special ops soldiers actually vouched for him, said he was credible. So this isn't some random person off the street making wild claims. Barber has a history that suggests he's been in the thick of it, in the thick of some very classified operations.
And what he's claiming is that he was part of a team. This team retrieved crashed aircraft, some of them exotic and anomalous, all this at a secret testing facility.
Which suggests there's a whole program dedicated to this, to recovering not just, advanced technology, but potentially non-human craft as well.
Right, and he goes on to describe seeing objects that display what are called the 5 observables.
Now, for our listeners out there, the 5 observables are characteristics associated with UAPs. Sudden acceleration, transmedium travel, stuff like that.
Like moving between air and water seamlessly.
He claims to have seen this firsthand. Yeah. Which, if it's true, this would suggest we're dealing with technology that's just beyond anything we currently understand.
So Barber, he talks about this one specific encounter. His first with a non-human craft. A white egg-shaped object about 20 feet long. No visible propulsion system.
And News Nation, they actually obtained some video footage. It seems to back up the story. It shows this egg-shaped object being transported by helicopter. Pretty wild.
The footage itself is remarkable. If it's authentic, it's some of the clearest visual evidence we have of a UAP retrieval, to date.
Barber also mentions recovering another type of craft. This one's disc-shaped, with 8 sections. They call it the acorn.
And this is where things take, a really fascinating turn. Barber claims there's a psychic component to this whole UAP program.
He starts talking about psionics. Individuals with, let's call them special abilities, they can supposedly communicate with, even control UAPs.
He describes witnessing these anotic operators summon a craft, almost like they're calling it down from the sky.
He says he even felt this profound emotional connection with a non-human intelligence during one retrieval. Wow.
So it raises these really fascinating questions about human consciousness and its potential to interact with advanced technology or maybe even extraterrestrial beings. But there's more to this story than just UAP retrievals. Barber talks about a time when he was contracted by private companies, ones that seemed to be connected to this whole UAP program. They wanted him to retrieve some really sensitive data.
It wasn't just crashed vehicles this time, though, right?
Right. It was about these Panasonic tough books, basically ruggedized laptops. Yeah, like they can take a beating. Anyway, these laptops supposedly held all the sensor data from the UAP retrieval operations. So we're not talking about just objects anymore. We're talking information control.
So it's like a whole new mission then, to find these laptops.
Yeah. Barber and his team had to track down these tough books. There was a real sense of urgency, of danger. They managed to recover 2 of them way out in the high Sierras.
But the hard drives were missing.
Exactly. The hard drives, the part with all the data, gone. Someone was actively trying to keep this information hidden. They went to extreme lengths to get rid of it.
So where did they end up finding them?
Well, they followed their intelligence leads, and eventually they found those missing hard drives, submerged in a sealed steel container 25 feet underwater in a high-altitude lake.
That's incredible. That's some serious effort to hide information. What could be on those hard drives that was so important?
That's the big question, isn't it? What secrets were on those hard drives that made someone go to such lengths to keep them hidden? It adds another layer to this whole thing, like a puzzle within a puzzle, you know?
Definitely. And it makes you wonder about the power dynamics at play. Who's pulling the strings and why?
And as they kept digging, as Barber and his team continued their mission, they started noticing things were getting more dangerous.
More dangerous how?
Well, the feel of their missions changed. Their intelligence contacts were different. Things felt off. More and more situations involved, well, shots being fired.
Wow. So it wasn't just about finding the data anymore. It was about staying alive.
Exactly. Barber even says he thinks they were being targeted, maybe set up to be eliminated by their former employer or someone pretending to be them. It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
Definitely. So what did they do? I mean, if they felt like they were being targeted like that.
Barber says he confronted the director of security, the guy in charge of security for the organization he was working for.
Yeah.
Silence. He was basically told to drop it, like it was nothing.
That's disturbing.
It suggests that those involved in these operations will go to any length to protect their secrets, even silencing the people who were once part of the program.
So that's what led Barber to create Skywatcher.
Exactly. He felt betrayed. And he wanted to expose what he'd seen. He couldn't trust the government, the private companies he'd worked for. They were operating in the shadows, more concerned with protecting secrets than uncovering the truth.
So Skywatcher, then, is about bringing these secrets into the light.
That's the idea. It's about transparency, informing the public, holding those in power accountable.
So it's more than just, a group of UFO enthusiasts.
Oh, absolutely. Skywatcher is made up of people who've been there. Former program insiders with firsthand experience. They understand the technology, the methods being used.
And they're working with government agencies too, right?
They are, which suggests a level of, credibility and access that other UAP groups just don't have.
And they've got some serious funding too, right? Through venture capital.
That's right. So they have the resources to conduct real investigations, ones that would be impossible for smaller groups to manage. They have the insider knowledge, the government connections, and the money.
But they're not afraid to use unorthodox methods either, are they?
Not at all. They're using psionics, remember. Barber believes it's key to understanding UAPs, even interacting with them. And this open-mindedness, this willingness to try unconventional methods, it's part of what makes them so unique.
So they're not just sitting around waiting for the government to release information.
Nope. They're going after the truth themselves. They're taking a proactive approach. And they've already had some interesting results. They investigated those drone sightings on the East Coast, remember? The ones that baffled the authorities. And there's the operation where they tried to actually summon a UAP using psionic abilities.
And they got footage.
They claim they did. Footage of what looks like a UAP dogfight.
That's a big deal. I mean, if it's real, it means there's interaction, maybe even conflict between UAPs, something we haven't seen before.
It's a game changer, potentially. And it shows just how committed Skywatcher is. They're willing to push the boundaries, they believe the truth is out there, and they're gonna find it.
But it can't be easy. I mean, Barber going public, his work with Skywatcher, it's put him in a difficult position.
Definitely. He's faced a lot of backlash, skeptics calling him crazy, people refusing to believe anything outside of their narrow view of the world.
But he's also become a kind of symbol, hasn't he? For those who believe in the UAP phenomenon.
He has. He's a hero to some. A whistleblower standing up to powerful forces. His story resonates with people who've had their own unexplained encounters.
It's given them a voice.
Exactly. And that voice is getting louder. It's becoming harder and harder to ignore.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Jacob Barber's claims, we got to think about the bigger picture. For decades, the official line on UAPs was basically, nothing to see here, move along.
Right. Sightings were always explained away, misidentified airplanes, weather balloons, swamp gas, you name it. But lately, something's changed.
Like the Pentagon releasing that UAP footage.
Exactly. And they admitted they couldn't identify those objects. Then there were the congressional hearings. It's like suddenly they're taking this stuff seriously.
Which has got to make people like Barber feel more comfortable coming forward, sharing their stories.
Definitely. It's like the dam's starting to break. All this secrecy around UAPs is finally starting to crumble.
And that's where Skywatcher comes in.
Yeah.
They're not waiting for the government to tell us what's going on. They're doing their own investigations.
Right. And they have the resources to do it right. They're using advanced tech, working with government agencies, and as we discussed, they're even exploring these unconventional methods like psionics.
So their goal is to prove that UAPs are real.
Well, it's more than that. They want to understand these objects, where they come from, what they can do, and what they mean for us.
It's like they're trying to answer the biggest questions we have about the universe, right? Are we alone? Are these things extraterrestrial?
Exactly. And these are questions that have been with us for a long time. Skywatcher, though, they're really on the cutting edge of this research.
But Barber going public with his story, starting Skywatcher, I mean, it hasn't been easy, has it?
No, not at all. He's faced his share of criticism, skeptics, people calling him a liar. It comes with the territory, I guess.
But his story, along with everything else that's been coming out, it's really forcing people to rethink what they believe about UAPs.
It is. It's like we're at a turning point. The evidence is piling up, and more credible people are coming forward. It's getting harder to just dismiss it all.
And if Barber is right, I mean, if these objects really are alien spacecraft.
Well, that changes everything. Our whole understanding of the universe, our place in it, it would mean we're not alone, that there's other intelligent life out there.
And we'd have to ask some tough questions. What do they want? What's their technology like? Are they a threat?
Definitely. But even if we don't have all the answers right now, these are questions worth asking, worth exploring. And that's what this whole UAP phenomenon is about, isn't it? Exploration, pushing the boundaries of what we know.
I think so. And thanks to people like Barber, organizations like Skywatcher, we're finally starting to get some answers.
It's a new era for UAP research. And honestly, it's pretty exciting. Who knows what we'll discover next?
It's a universe full of mysteries. And thanks for joining us as we explore them here on Atmospheric Lights.
And so, Carl, here's the million-dollar question. Do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
Right. So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
Issues that Congress and others have been concerned about are basically safety of flight concerns and counterintelligence issues. But of course, there's always the question of, is there something else that we simply do not understand that might come extraterrestrially?